Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar today. Today we have an update for all students from the May 2020 deferral. Thank you for joining us today. I know a lot of you have quite a lot of questions and we hope to be able to provide you some more information and hope to answer as many questions as possible today. We have two of our wonderful staff from UEL today joining us. We have Sumaya Zabwala, who's an international student advisor. And we also have Jennifer Haywood, who's also on the same team, and we're delighted to have them here today. I'm just going to run for a bit of housekeeping prior to us commencing the presentation. You should see a chat box within the dashboard, the webinar dashboard. Please feel free to pop in any questions that you have. We will endeavor to answer all the questions, and we will answer the most commonly asked questions at the very end of the presentation. If you have a question, please try and put it in one question in total, not like several different questions, because obviously there is going to be a high volume of questions and there are only two of us on the chat box, so that would be appreciated if you could make it a bit easier for us as well. Fantastic. Well, without further ado, I will pass it over to Sumaya, who will be giving the presentation today. Thanks so much, Sumaya.
Thank you very much, Annabelle. Hi, everybody. My name is Sumaya, and I'm an international student advisor. Today, the purpose of today's presentation is simply to update all our September starters. Okay, we understand that this is a very unfortunate situation. It was something that was beyond our control. That we had to defer all April students to September. It's been a very difficult decision, but we had to ensure that we do this due to the current global pandemic, and I'm sure you guys will all appreciate that. Okay, but we're happy to have you coming in September, so we definitely look forward to that. Okay, so as I said before, I work for the international student advice team. Now, within our department, we have a compliance team as well. We all work under the same umbrella, but it's sort of been separated. So we because we have two different roles. So in a moment, I'm going to explain to you the distinction. So moving on to the next slide. So this is a department I work for, which is International Student Advice. Now, basically, we are OIAC accredited to give immigration advice. So we have got accreditation to provide advice to our students at level 1 and 2. Anything above that will refer you to an immigration advisor. So essentially, we play an advisory and supportive role to all our tier 4 students and guide students throughout their stay at UEL. Okay, so that's about international student advice. Now, moving on to the next slide. So compliance. So we also work with compliance. That's also our team as well. And so just to give you a bit of background, so we have legal obligations to the Home Office as tier 4 sponsors. So we'll be given a license to allow to sponsor students to come and study at our university. So we have to follow the immigration rules as license holders. Okay, so ultimately the compliance role is to ensure students are adhering to their tier 4 visa condition once they arrive at the university. So that it will be things like attendance monitoring, working conditions, taking breaks. So in that event, what are our obligations to the Home Office? So here we'll have the compliance will have reporting obligations. Some of you may have already had pre-CAS interviews, so you may have spoken to a compliance officer. We want to ensure that we are transparent from the outset in order for our students to get the best out of their stay. It is important also for our students to ensure that they take full responsibility, ensuring they meet their tier 4 obligations. So just in summary, we have obviously obligations to the Home Office, and so does the student. But ultimately, the full responsibility lies on the student. And we want to ensure that you fulfill your obligations so you can have an enjoyable time at the university. We always say, if in doubt, please do get in touch with us. We're always there to support you. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So these are the objectives that I've listed, okay, to discuss today. And we'll be focusing on these today because I feel that they're quite important to discuss. So the first one is recent Home Office changes. The second one is maintenance requirements. The third one is UK VI interview. And the fourth one is applicant scenarios. Now, I'll be discussing various scenarios today. So just listen out for the ones that apply to you, because some you may see, okay, this doesn't apply to me, but it might apply to you at a later stage. So it's always good to listen out. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So the new rules replacement vignette. Now, we have some good news amongst all this uncertainty that's been happening around us. The Home Office has made some changes to the vignette process. So this, just for you guys that may not know, the vignette is essentially a 30-day entry visa students will receive once their application is successful. So what I've done, I've just put, if you look at the image there, you'll see this is a sample vignette. Don't worry, it's not a real student. I've just picked this out from the Home Office guidance. So so this applies to applicant students whose visa is expired or due to expire. You can request a free replacement with revised dates. This is great news. This is free of charge until the end of the year. Now, I haven't listed out the process to do this because you will need to wait until we advise you to apply for the replacement vignette. So please do not apply for this until we advise you. We plan to do this maybe around June time, so please look out for your emails. So moving on to the next slide. So overview of the precast process, and some of you might already be going through this process, and sometimes it's nice to just get an overview of the process. So pre-CAS interview. Now, what is a pre-CAS interview? So compliance, as I said earlier about when I explained about compliance, conduct an interview with each student, right? And the purpose of the pre-CAS interview is so that we can ascertain whether your plans to study in UK meet the Tier 4 requirements. Let's say it's almost like a prep tool, as this can help you in being prepared for the UK VI interview as well, because there might be some questions that might be similar, but not all. So you should always ensure that you prepare for your UK VI interview. Okay, so that's essentially the UEL's pre-CAS interview process, not to be confused with the UK VI interview. So as you can see on my second bullet point, I've put in bold Tier 4 maintenance requirements, and I've in brackets, you can see that I've written immigration rules. These are the rules of the UK VI. This is something that is absolutely required. So first is living cost. Now the Home Office needs to see that you're able to fend for yourself when you arrive in UK, and you're able to pay for your own living costs, so to speak, because students will not be able to apply for public funds. So the amount you need to show is 385, sorry, if your course is for 9 months or more, plus unpaid tuition fees. So you need to ensure that you're showing the living costs, which will be 11,385, plus the unpaid tuition fees. Okay, so I'm just going to give you an example. So if, for just an example, just plucking a figure out of thin air. So if for example your fees are, let's say, £10,000, and so adding that with 11,385, that would be 21,385. I hope my math is correct. I'm sure Jen, my colleague, will correct me if I'm wrong. So that part is covered in terms of that. So some applicants may be required to submit TB certificate, not all applicants. So the Home Office say that the certain students that come from certain countries will be required to submit a TB certificate. Now, if you see on the link, this is the link where you can actually see which countries require a TB certificate. So, if your country, say for example, you're from India and you see that, you know, the Home Office require you to have TB certificate, then you will have to go to a clinic and get a TB certificate, and that should not be more than 6 months. Okay. Also, going back to your funds, as when I spoke about earlier, the living cost and the unpaid tuition fees, the Home Office require the funds be in the account, in your bank account, for 28 days, and the statement should be no more than 31 days old. So it varies according. If you've got a scholarship, then there's some requirements for that. Don't worry so much about this, because we've got a we will give you this information, and you will see things like, you know, which countries require, you know, TB. You'll be provided this sort of information once you apply for your maintenance documents. So moving on to the next slide. So the UK VI interview. So once you've submitted your UK VI application, the Home Office will invite you for an interview. Now, the purpose of this interview is to find out whether the student genuinely wants to study in UK, and if their declared circumstances are genuine. It's really important that you prepare for this interview. My team has prepared a very useful video on UK VI interview on you know, what to expect. It's a really amazing video. I urge all of you guys to watch this. Those who are still yet to do the UK VI interview, I would definitely urge for you to watch this. So I'm just going to ask my colleague Annabelle, she can just link that into the chat. I'm just going to ask her to do that now. All right. So moving on to the next slide. Now I'm going to move on to applicant scenarios. Now, so what I've done here, so I've put in A and B for one scenario because it's very similar. Okay. There's two types of students in this category: students who have visa application approved. There's students who have currently not traveled to the UK due to the deferral and COVID-19 pandemic. So what do these students need to do? So these students do not need to submit maintenance documents, TB certificate if applicable, or have another pre-CAS interview. This is because you would have done all this before submitting your visa application. So you do not need to do this, okay? And also, just before I move on to the next slide, you can apply for a replacement vignette free of charge in the correct time frame, as I explained before about the update. But please do not do this until our team advise you to do so. All right, thank you. I'll move on to the next slide. So again, the same thing, student who had visa application approved, but in this case, traveled to the UK, right? Students who have traveled to the UK need to submit their BRP card to our compliance team. For those who do not know, a BRP card, essentially, it's a biometric residence card. It's almost like an identity card you will receive once you have a successful visa application. The card will include things like your name, full name, date of birth, visa permission, work conditions, you know, no recourse of public funds. It's important that you check all your details are correct on your BRP. And if there are errors, please do notify us. So what I've done is I've just got a sample from the Home Office. If you can see, that's what a BRP looks like. Okay, so just to be absolutely clear, you need to submit your BRP card to pbs@uel.ac.uk. And just to let you guys know, PBS is essentially compliance. All right, moving on to the next slide. Now, this is a second scenario. Pre-CAS interview passed, but require maintenance documents. So these students would have passed their pre-CAS interview with the compliance team. So all this student needs to do is prepare for the maintenance documents in line with the Tier 4 requirements. Do you remember when we spoke about maintenance document, about having a certain amount of money in your account? That's what I'm talking about here. So you do not need to submit the maintenance document until we advise you. We will check your maintenance document that it's in line with the UK VI regulations, and then we will proceed to advise you to apply for the UK VI application. So moving on to the next slide. So Scenario 3. So pre-CAS interview yet to be passed. So these are students who are required by compliance either to take their first interview or to take their second interview. Some students would have been invited for a second interview from compliance. So, you know, you guys should ensure that you prepare for this interview, all right? And you should also prepare for your maintenance documents in line with the Tier 4 requirements. Again, do not submit these maintenance documents until we advise you. Now, with the pre-CAS interview, you can use our website. There's a really useful guide. It's called UEL Pre-CAS Interview Guide. And I'm just going to ask Annabelle if she can just link that on the chat so you guys can have access to it. So if those who have, are due to do their interview, please do read this guide. It's a very useful guide, and you also get some helpful tips about your UK VI interview in the future as well. If you can see the image that I put on the slide right at the top, this is how the front page looks like, all right? So this is something that was drafted by our compliance team. It's very useful, and I definitely would advise you to read this before doing your pre-CAS interview. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So CAS assigned. So what is a CAS? Basically, a CAS is a confirmation of acceptance letter. It's a letter that you receive from your sponsor, which is us, to support your application for your student visa. So some may have already gone through this process, so this may not apply to you. So the letter will include things like your personal details, your course details, your study duration, and a unique CAS number that you will be required to input in your UK VI application. So this is a very important reference number because you'll need that later. So these students would have passed the pre-CAS maintenance checks in April. However, the dates on the maintenance documents would have expired by now. So we would ask these students to resubmit updated maintenance documents because you know, you cannot use the CAS until you do this. So we will write to you about this as well. So don't worry, we will write to you maybe I think in June, and we'll let you know when to provide these documents. And just to be absolutely sure is that students do not need to redo their pre-CAS interview with our compliance team. Okay, so if you look at the fourth paragraph, and this applies to students who have submitted their UK VI application but awaiting a decision. Okay, so you should look out for any emails from the UK VI regarding your application. The visa application centres, as you guys may be aware, are closed at the moment due to COVID-19. So once they reopen, we will help you chase for an update. All right. So moving on to the next slide. Now, tips before arrival in the UK. So it's really important that you read these tips because sometimes students might come and they might not expect certain things, and you know, it might take them off guard. So you know, I think that it's really important that you know, you read what to expect at the border once you arrive in the UK. Now, I found some really great tips online. One of them being first step guidance written by the British Council. So you can take that link, and that's really a very good and useful guidance. The Home Office student arrival 10 top tips. That's pretty much one page document. It's very quick and easy to read. So I definitely would say to students to read that before they arrive in UK. And another one is UK Sister. UK Sister, essentially, they also on their website they have very useful immigration information. So that's something that you know, you guys can check out. But they've written an article about going through immigration control and what you will require. And so that's really, so it'll tell you you'll require documents, certain documents, you know, at the border. So it's really, really important, I think, that you know, to read these tips before arriving in the UK. All right. So finally, that's the end of my presentation. If you guys have any questions, please do direct them into the chat section. Myself, Jennifer, you know, we'll try and answer these questions.
Thank you so much, Samaya, for such a great presentation. And yeah, very informative. And I hope all of our attendees on the line, I hope it answered a lot of your questions. I'm going to bring my colleague Jen into this question and answer session along with Samaya. I know there have been quite a lot of questions. Jen, have there been any particular that you've seen asked quite frequently?
Yeah, so one particular question we've been asked is if I've already passed my pre-CAS interview, do I need to do the pre-CAS interview again?
Okay. So as explained before, those that have passed their pre-CAS interviews, they do not need to do it again unless compliance say to you that you need to do it again. Then you will need to do it again. But if there's no information from them saying that you need to do it again, then you do not need to redo your pre-CAS interview if you've passed it.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Yeah, so if you've already done your pre-CAS interview and you've passed your pre-CAS interview, you will not need to do the pre-CAS interview again. Sam, another question we've received is, do we need to submit maintenance documents again if we have our visa?
If you have your visa as described in my slide, if you have your visa, you're not required to do that because you would have made your UK VI application, you would have submitted your maintenance documents, and that obviously would have given you the decision and the visa. So you've passed that stage, so you do not need to submit maintenance documents again.
Thank you, Sam. And we've had a few questions being asked from students who already have their visas, and they're wanting to know how they can get their 30-day replacement visa.
Sure. And when I spoke about the update to the Vignette process, which is obviously great news, I categorically said that, you know, do not do anything yet. We will advise you in June about the process and how to do this, because everything's very time sensitive. So it's really important that we apply for this in a timely way. All right. So we will advise you in around June. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jen. We will advise you when to do this.
Okay.
All right,
thank
Jen?
you, Sam. Yeah. Thank you. Just one moment. We've had some students asking, in order for a student to get their 30-day replacement visa, do they need to submit maintenance documents to UKVI again to get their 30-day replacement visa?
So I've looked at the process, and there's nothing that says, from what I can see, that you need to submit your maintenance documents. You would have already done that with your UKVI application. So they would have approved of your maintenance then. So I don't think there's any need, unless the Home Office advise differently, but there's nothing on the guidance or anywhere to suggest that needs to be done.
Yeah, so if you've already got your visa and you need to get a replacement 30-day visa in your passport to travel, as Sam said, we'll be notifying you in the next couple of months on what date that you'll be required to travel to the UK and how you can get that replacement 30-day visa. And it's completely free of charge. So getting the 30-day replacement visa is not going to cost you any money. And as Sam said, if as your visa has already been granted, you are not required to submit maintenance documents again in order to get the 30-day visa. But what I will also say is it might be worth keeping the money in your bank account, just so that perhaps when you're traveling to the UK, you can carry a copy of your bank statement in your hand luggage, just to show the border officer should you be asked about how you are going to fund your studies. But in terms of getting the 30-day visa, you are not required to show the maintenance documents again.
Thank you, Jen.
Hi everyone. Just from my end, I can see a lot of you are asking whether September intake will be going ahead. I know this is a burning question, and it is a question that all of you will be keen to know about. At this point in time, you will probably know through articles in the news that most universities haven't declared how they plan to proceed. There are a few universities across the US, and I think one in the UK that has decided at this point in time, but it is the COVID-19 is ever changing, and right now we are not showcasing what we are deciding. Of course, in an ideal situation, we'd like to go ahead with on-campus delivery and face-to-face, but we have to assess things as they come nearer the time. And once a university makes a final declaration, we will make sure that you know about it. Jen, are there any other key areas that you think that we need to mention at this point?
We've just had another question. If students have already got their visas, are they required to submit the TB test certificate again?
Again, like before, you've already been granted your visa, so you won't be required to submit any further documentation.
Okay, thank you. I think that's Annabelle. I think that's it in terms of the types of questions we've had related to visas and immigration.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. For all of you that are asking questions regarding offer letters or fees, which we've had quite a lot of, and I'm sorry we weren't able to answer every question individually in the chat, but please direct your question to admissions. Their email is admissintl@uel.ac.uk. And then Samaya, I'll pass it over to you for this final slide regarding contact details.
Thank you very much, Jennifer and Annabelle. If you do want to get in touch with us, please do use the applicant portal to ask any questions related to immigration. We'll be more than happy to assist. If you need to book an appointment, then please email on isa@uel.ac.uk. As you guys know, currently, obviously, there's no face-to-face teaching or interactions at the moment, so any appointments will have to be booked via Teams. Okay, so that's the end of the segment. We hope you and your friends, family, and loved ones stay safe during this period. Thank you very much for attending today. All right.
Thanks, Samaya.
Thank
Goodbye,
you, Sam.
everyone.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.